So it looked like Caitlin Clark has a huge update.
For weeks, the air around Indiana was thick with uncertainty, cryptic reports, half-truths, and an unsettling quiet. The face of women's basketball had seemingly disappeared, and in her absence, rumors rushed in to fill the silence. Official statements danced around the truth, offering polished phrases that said a lot, yet revealed nothing. Then, without warning, a blurry clip hit the internet. Just a few seconds of Caitlin Clark drilling a deep shot from the logo, and suddenly, everything flipped. That wasn't just footage, it was a message. A challenge to the carefully crafted narrative the Fever had been pushing. This wasn't a routine injury update. It was a disruption. A sharp break in the PR script, almost like a signal that Clark was ready to rewrite the storyline herself. Now, across the WNBA, questions are flying. Was this a strategic leak meant to rattle the competition? Or the first undeniable sign that the league's biggest name is back and ready to rescue a team teetering on the edge of collapse?
Caitlin Clark has in fact returned to an extent. She has returned to an extent with the Indiana Fever. Look, Caitlin Clark is far from back.
The clip hit like a spark in a powder keg, an unexpected jolt dropped right into a media landscape desperate for answers. After weeks of silence from the Indiana Fever's front office, fans had grown used to vague statements and sideline shots. But this wasn't that. Suddenly, there she was, Caitlin Clark, not on the bench, not buried in rehab drills, but fully suited up and locked in. She wasn't just present, she was moving with purpose. Cutting through defenders, handling the rock like she never missed a beat. And then, the moment that sent social media into a frenzy, she stepped into a logo range 3 and buried it with ease. No hesitation. No rust. Just pure rhythm. The net barely moved, like time had never touched her game. That one shot said everything. It had weight. It had clarity. And it spoke louder than every official update that came before it. No spin, no filter, just Clark, back in her element, rewriting the story without saying a word.
She is far from being fully back and, everything's all good and you don't need to be worried because, let's be real, we kind of should be worried. Because, again, they're still being secretive about it. But at least this means we have to assume she's back this season.
For weeks, fans were left clinging to one of the most frustrating phrases in sports, day-to-day. It's the kind of term usually reserved for a mild tweak or a rolled ankle, something manageable, temporary. But in Caitlin Clark's case, that vague label dragged on for nearly 2 months, turning what should have been a minor setback into a confusing, season-threatening mystery. Each official update, when they bothered to release one, felt more like a puzzle than a progress report. Carefully worded. Intentionally vague. No timeline. No specifics. Just a fog of uncertainty that left everyone guessing. The messaging didn't inform, it obscured. Then came the viral video. No script. No filters. Just raw footage from a cell phone camera that told the truth the team wouldn't. Clark in motion, drilling shots, working the court like she'd never left. In seconds, the smoke cleared. Fans finally saw what was really happening, not because of a press release, but because someone hit record. But this was more than just a behind-the-scenes look. It was a loud wake-up call. The team wasn't simply missing its star, they were unraveling without her. With Clark sidelined, the Indiana Fever had lost their identity. The offense that once ran with electricity now looked stalled and directionless, every possession a grind. Injuries piled up. Sophie Cunningham was out. Sydney Colson, also missing. What remained was a patchwork lineup, held together with emergency contracts and unfamiliar names signed just to keep 5 players on the court. The weight of the franchise fell on the backs of veterans like Kelsey Mitchell, who was asked to do the impossible, carry an offense with no gravity, no rhythm, and no support. The result? A team not just struggling, but barely surviving. A season that began with promise now hung by a thread.
She's back this season. So Caitlin Clark running 5-0 with the backups, which is, again, something that we hadn't seen before. So Caitlin's actually at practice. So this is the first we have heard of, Caitlin actually being at practice. And because Caitlin's at practice, we know at least the goal is and the expectation is that she's going to be back.
The difference on the court was impossible to ignore, and it wasn't subtle. Without Caitlin Clark stretching defenses out to 30 feet, opposing teams adjusted fast. There was no longer a need to guard the perimeter with urgency. So they packed the paint, crashing down hard on the Fever's interior and turning every possession into a grind. Suddenly, Aaliyah Boston, arguably one of the most dominant post players of her generation, was smothered by double teams almost every trip down the floor. She was forced to fight through a wall of bodies just to get a clean look or a decent pass. The spacing was gone. The lanes were clogged. And the entire offense felt like it had shrunk in on itself. What was once a free-flowing system now looked panicked and predictable. The Fever weren't running plays, they were surviving. Each game felt less like professional basketball and more like a battle just to stay in contention. Meanwhile, the playoff picture was slipping further out of reach with every loss. And as the standings grew tighter, the pressure started boiling over, not just in the locker room, but online. Fans, analysts, and insiders alike began clashing over what the franchise's next move should be. Oddly enough, the most measured suggestion sparked the biggest backlash. In a moment where chaos seemed to demand bold action, simply playing it safe became the most divisive stance of all.
Which is a positive thing for the Indiana Fever, because the Indiana Fever don't stand a single chance.
Now let's be real about what this means.
As the weeks ticked by without Caitlin Clark, the debate started to shift. A growing chorus of fans and analysts began to push a radical idea: shut her down for the season. Not out of frustration, but out of protection. Their logic was simple. Clark isn't just a star, she's the future. Why gamble her long-term health for a flickering chance at a late playoff push? On paper, it made perfect sense. Groin injuries are notoriously unpredictable, tricky to treat, slow to heal, and one wrong step away from re-aggravation. The safest move was obvious: don't risk it. Let her rest, let the season go, and regroup for next year. It was the cautious play, the smart take. But that argument overlooked something crucial: who Caitlin Clark is. This isn't some meaningless January game in a throwaway year. This is the home stretch, playoff spots still mathematically in reach, the pressure mounting. And players like Clark weren't built to sit on the sidelines watching their team collapse. She's wired for high-stakes moments. For pressure. For the chance to change the game. So when footage surfaced showing her not just shooting, but gliding through drills and knocking down logo threes, it didn't just suggest progress. It screamed readiness. This wasn't a player easing back in. This was someone who looked like she never left. But while the sports world argued over her timeline, a tiny, easily missed detail in that leaked video flipped the script. It was subtle, hidden in plain sight, but for those who caught it, it told the real story. In the world of pro sports, practice gear speaks volumes. Players coming back from injury usually wear a brightly colored jersey, yellow, red, even neon. It's a universal code: no contact. Stay clear. A visual shield for a player still on the mend. But Clark? She was in full blue, the same practice jersey as the fully active roster. That wasn't an oversight. It was a silent confirmation. She wasn't being held back anymore, she was fully reintegrated. Not tiptoeing through drills under a trainer's watchful eye, but practicing as one of the team. Once fans caught on, social media lit up. People became frame-by-frame analysts, zooming in on jersey shades, comparing angles, breaking it down like the Zapruder film. And the verdict was unanimous: Clark was back. Which brought a larger, far more frustrating truth into focus: the Indiana Fever hadn't just mishandled an injury, they'd mishandled the narrative. Their radio silence, their non-answers, and their overuse of the phrase "day-to-day" didn't protect Clark. It confused fans, fueled rumors, and eroded trust. People who had bought in, who had paid for tickets, tuned in, and made Caitlin Clark part of their summer, were forced to scavenge for answers from grainy videos and sideline whispers. So what was really going on? Was this just bad PR from a front office unprepared for the media glare Clark brings? Or was it something more calculated, a smokescreen to keep rivals off balance, unsure when, or if, she'd return? Either way, the strategy backfired. The team lost control of the narrative. And in doing so, they created unnecessary chaos around their biggest asset. But all of that noise fades when she steps back onto the court. Because Clark's return isn't just about scoring. It's about her effect. Her gravity. The way defenders have to pick her up the second she crosses midcourt. That kind of range reshapes a defense. With Clark back, Aaliyah Boston finally gets room to operate. No more instant double teams. Kelsey Mitchell finds open driving lanes. Shooters get cleaner looks. The entire offense breathes again. One player changes everything. And that's what has some WNBA corners sweating. The critics who downplayed her rise. The fans who rolled their eyes at the hype. They know what's coming: a flood of deep threes, highlight passes, and momentum-shifting plays. And if the whispers are true, her return is being timed for maximum impact, a nationally televised showdown with a rival that could reignite the league's spotlight heading into the postseason. That's not just basketball drama, it's marketing gold. This isn't just about saving a season. It's about laying the foundation for something bigger. Giving Clark and Boston real playoff reps, building chemistry in real time. Showing the world that this isn't a novelty, it's the beginning of a dynasty. The leaked footage. The secret jersey. The messy PR. It all leads to this, a moment that could define not just the Fever season, but the future of the WNBA. Because whether people like it or not, Caitlin Clark isn't just a player. She's the engine. The ratings draw. The reason millions are tuning in. And now that she's back, the game's not just changing, it's being rewritten.